We have with us today Manjula Pradeep, the Executive Director of Navsarjan Trust, and we are very excited to be talking to you because, like I just told you, Dalit Camera has mainly been working around the south, and this was the first time we ventured into, something up north. So, we've all heard a lot about the kind of work Navsarjan Trust does, but since our viewers, many of our viewers are mostly from South India, I think it would be great if you could tell us what Navsarjan Trust does and the kind of work its founders, the kind of work it has been doing. You were completing 12 years as the executive director. So if you can tell us a little bit more about the founders, why Navsarjan Trust was formed, and the kind of work it is involved in, it would be great for us.
Jai Bhim, Navsarjan was founded in 1989. And one of the founders of Navsarjan Trust, which means new creations, is Martin Macwan. Martin was a very young guy who joined the Dalit Movement in 80s, early 80s. And that time, I think there was some work being done on the issue of caste-based discrimination in Gujarat. But a lot of work needed to be done, and during that time, when he was with another organization, 4 of his colleagues were shot dead on 25th January 1986 in Golana. And I think that was the turning point for Martin's life, and where he decided that he wanted to focus on issues of atrocities and violence and discrimination against Dalits in Gujarat. So in 1989, the organization was set up, and with two basic learnings: that violence is a systematic phenomena, and to address the issue of violence, you need a mass-based organization. So basically, focusing on building leadership of Dalit communities, building leadership of Dalit youth, is the core agenda of Navsarjan. So when we set up the organization, a lot of work goes on building leadership. So a lot of systematic training is being done to build the leadership, and one of the focus area is how to address the issue of fear, which is based on caste. So looking at building caste consciousness, making people aware about their rights, and understanding their fear, and why are they afraid of non-Dalits, and making them realize that how does you can understand the power relation, and how do you address the issue of inequality based on gender and caste. With the caste. And for Gujarat, if you see that we are just 7% in as Dalit community, so it's one of the minority, one of the lowest like in terms of the numbers, the figures, we are the lowest in terms of looking at the minorities in Gujarat. And then within that, if you see that the forms of untouchability and the forms of discrimination against Dalits, I think is rampant in comparison to other communities, whether it is Adivasis or Muslims. But because of the fear, ingrained fear based on caste system, it is very challenging for an organization like Navsarjan to withstand the entire power dynamics and then to focus on the issue of atrocities and violence. So one of the major program of Navsarjan when I joined in 1992 was providing legal aid to the victims of atrocities and discrimination. So we set up this legal aid center. We didn't have resources, we didn't have money, we didn't even had an office, and we were paid very minimal because we didn't have resources. From there we started, and I think that was very important for us to work on the issue of discrimination and violence, and focusing on the implementation of Atrocity Act, which came up in 1989. So Navsarjan started creating awareness about the Atrocity Act, how important it is to get protection under this law. Why do we need to address the issue of violence against Dalits, and to build the social movement across the caste violence in Gujarat. So we have taken up several issues of murder, mass attacks, rapes, and then we have organized the community apart from providing them legal aid. But when we provide them legal aid, we also look at the need for social and support and moral support, because the people who are fighting for justice also face a lot of hostility, not only by the dominant caste but by their own community people, because they are also afraid. So during that time you need a very strong support, and that support is provided by the people who have been trained by Navsarjan, so that they don't they have a backstopping support. they hold back and they say that no, I want to fight for justice. So if you see in that sense, there have been several cases of violence against Dalits. Gujarat, I think, is one of the 5 states who tops in caste-based violence in India. So if you see, there is nothing which is not being happening against Dalits in Gujarat. But the point is how to organize the Dalits. So we have done movement building in Gujarat. So we have gone from villages to villages. We started from 5 villages, and then we slowly moved down to many more villages. We expanded our work. But when we started with 5 villages, we just worked in those 5 villages for 5 years. And our strategy is we go from house to house, each Dalit house, and we build up the rapport with them. And we understand their fear, we understand their challenges, we understand their issues. We stay there, we hold meetings with them, we organize training programs with them. That's how Navsarjan works in Gujarat. And we were very clear that when we talk about Dalit leadership, we said that people who don't have qualification but who have fire in their belly and spark in their eyes will be trained by us. So whoever became part of the organization, they may not be qualified, but they have that energy, they have the commitment and the courage. And what we were able to do is just make them aware, train them up. So we said that how do we define power? We said power doesn't come from being born in a particular caste, gender, religion or subcaste when you talk about Dalits, but power comes from knowledge. So if you have the knowledge, you have the power. So at one time people were saying that despising us also, saying what these people will be able to do. Because people think that as per the Manu code of law, where we say that Dalits don't have understanding, they don't have brains, they don't have mind, they're always dependent on the dominant caste. We wanted to break that entire understanding and the psyche in the Gujarati society, that if Dalit take leadership, they don't only lead their issues, but they also take issues of other communities who are also marginalized. So that's what we've been able to do in Gujarat.
Right. So, in your, you mentioned that, considering that Gujarat is one of the top 5 states where, which faces extreme forms of caste discrimination, the Atrocities Act becomes important here, and we have seen, at least in the places where I have worked, I've seen how the Atrocities Act is almost never, used the way it should be used, and most of these cases end up in acquittals because the police do not do the initial investigation, and all the processes correctly. Maybe that is because the police force by itself is, majority dominant caste or upper caste or Brahmin, as you can call it, and the system itself is, Manuwadi. But how has the case been in Gujarat? Meaning, since again there was an organization overseeing this, have you been able to get the police to, implement the Atrocities Act the way it has to be done?
Oh, initially when I joined in 92, I knew that when we were going in the villages, focusing on the Atrocity Act and talking about making them aware of the law, and when we were going to the police station, the police also didn't know what the Atrocity Act is and what are the sections. And I was like, I can understand that the people who are being discriminated, they may not be knowing because they are less educated and they don't have power and they don't hold a position. But when you go in a police station and the police do not know that about the act, it's something very surprising and shocking for us. And so we have to make the police also aware. So initially even now also with the new amended Atrocity Act, it's the same situation. But from I would say about my experience, what we have seen, that when we go to the police, that the first question comes is when a Dalit rights is being violated and that person goes to the police station, the first response of the police is, because you are untouchable, you are a Dalit, we will not register a complaint. So that's how they start. And then if you have an organization like Navsarjan who's pushing the police, then the police will say, okay, we'll register the FIR. And they don't even look at the sections. At that time, like there are 15 sections in the Atrocity Act. They won't look at what form of violence or discrimination has happened to that person. Just put 3110, which is public humiliation. And in the FIR, in the police complaint, you have to mention that they have used caste-based derogatory word. And if that is not being used, then the FIR will not be registered. So that's the mindset, that you should be humiliated, then only Atrocity Act could be, sections could be included in the FIR.
Right.
So that is very funny. I think it would be in other states as well.
Yeah, of course.
So there have been instances where the police have not taken immediate action. So what we have to do is, many times they don't register the police complaint in the police station. So then we write an application to the district superintendent of police or the commissioner of police. And then if the commissioner of the police or DSP doesn't take the complaint, then we have to go to register in the private as a private complaint in the court.
Yeah.
So we have done it like
We've done
that.
that.
So it's nothing different than other states.
But again, the whole point of the act, or of such an act existing, is to obviously combat discrimination. But for that act to be successful, the police forces and the judiciary need to be in tandem with those who are trying to battle this discrimination. And if they are not, and if they are castes themselves, like you said, then they are not going to file the charge sheet. They are not going to investigate the way they should be. And ultimately the act fails, and the person who is it's like a chain reaction, isn't it? So how do we deal with that? Because
We did a study. The first study we did after starting the organization was atrocities on Dalits in Gujarat, focusing on this act, and that was released in '96. And what it came out was that there are 13 atrocity sensitive districts in Gujarat.
and the total number of districts in Gujarat are?
Now they are 32, but at that time they were less than around 25.
Oh,
The point is that out of almost half, 50% of the districts were atrocity prone. So what does the state do? If there are atrocity prone districts in Gujarat, 50%, you have to ensure that the law is implemented effectively. For that there are special provisions in the act. Until now, let me tell you, until 2016 nothing has been done. There is no appointment of special court, there are no special police stations. Even the investigation is not done by Deputy Superintendent of Police as per the law. The accused many times are not arrested. They are accused have taken anticipatory bail, right? So everything is there. Now if there is a Dalit person whose rights are violated and that person has filed an atrocity complaint, and then that person faces, or his community or her community faces social boycott, that the state does not want to declare that in this village the Dalits are facing social boycott, because then they have to do all the provisions. So we have to go in the high court to ensure that the social boycott is declared in that village, because there are villages where the Dalits have moved out of the village just because the social boycott continues for years and years and the Dalits don't feel safe in that village.
I know, considering the fact that, like you said, only 7% of the population in Gujarat is Dalit, then I can only imagine the smaller portion of villages. I can only imagine how in villages maybe Dalits form even smaller group, maybe like around 4 or 5 households or 6, 7 households. For instance, in Samter, where I was, I covered for, before the rally there was violence, the number of Dalit households are around 30 is what I was told. And considering the dominant community is widespread, do you think this is also one of the reasons why discrimination is so high, and they are also not able to figure out how to deal with it because they are small in numbers themselves? And how do you deal with this?
Absolutely, I agree with you. Like if you have just few households, and the level of fear then increases, because ultimately when you are in minority, everybody's eyes are on you, and everybody will ensure as a community that if you want to assert your rights, you will be attacked. And then if you are segregated, you are isolated, you live in a separate locality, you are not seen as part of the village, right? You also face untouchability, all forms of untouchability. So how do you survive? And then if you don't have land, if you don't have resources, if you are dependent on the dominant caste, then if you want to survive in a village, despite you are not treated as a human being, you have to accept the reality, and then you can't withstand, and you say, no, I want to assert my rights. How will you do that, Garima? It's so difficult.
And if you end up doing that, and then I'm sure there'll be backlash, because I met this family sitting in Una at the Ambedkar statue, Piyush.
Yes.
Who's 2 of his members who were burned, and
one of them, and the other one died.
Other one died, right?
Because of the attack. Yeah.
Because of the attack, sorry. So what I could understand from that is they were slowly moving up, in the economically, and they were getting their own piece of land. And my understanding of the situation is because of the fact that they were, no longer dependent on the dominant caste and they were like becoming self-sustainable. The attack was also casteist, but it was also because these guys, are like standing up for themselves and are, becoming self-sufficient, and we will not allow for that. This is my reading of the situation. Correct me if I'm wrong.
You're very correct, because see, there have been many more cases than the case which you mentioned in Akolali village. Now there is another case in Karadi, that is in Saila, which is where the Darbars, the Rajputs, are dominant. Now we have very few household there, I think around 15. This guy who was working in the military, his name was Dinesh. In 2005, he was building the best house in the entire village, and I think the Darbars, the Rajput, couldn't see that. They were jealous of him building a good house, and what he was saying, that his family was becoming economically reliant. So then, what they did was they fired a gun on him, and he was killed just because of that. He had come on vacations, on holidays, a young guy. His wife was just around 20 and a small child he had. He just killed him, just like that. There was so much of impunity. And I was just wondering, what is it? There was another village called Devadiya, and it's in Lakhtar block. That's also in Surendranagar district. Now this Surendranagar district is atrocity prone district and untouchability prone. There also Hirabai, he was a volunteer of Navsarjan, and again he had attended the World Social Forum in Mumbai. The same year, he was killed. And you know why he was killed? One was, he wanted to stand for reserve seat in the village head, Sarpanch, Panchayat. So they didn't allow him, because if the Rajputs, the Darbars, if they were knowing that if he becomes a village head, then he'll do a lot of development work for his community. But despite that, he kept questioning. And then there was pathway being built in the Dalit locality, so they were putting good stones in the Dalit locality, and the Darbar couldn't accept it. So they started removing it. So Hirabai just challenged them. So they just pulled him by his collar and said, "How dare you question us?" And then the same day, when he was going on his bicycle to the police station, Lakhtar police station, on the way he was attacked by them on tractor. And there's a weapon called Kupti. It's a very sharp weapon, and he was just killed on the spot on the way towards Lakhtar. Now, what was his crime? He didn't have. So I can give you examples. I think it's very painful for us to accept that just because you're questioning, you are just being killed. Last year only, Vijay and his sister. Last year his sister, and day 1 year back, Vijay was killed in both of them in Lolia village, not very far from this Yatra which went through. And I like, they could have gone to that. I think they must have gone in that village. And I was so pained that this brother and the sister were killed. And the brother was the village head, and he was very active in one of the political parties also. I don't know what the political party has done for his, because he was the breadwinner also. And he was just married 5 months back, and he was killed. Vijay, his name was Vijay. And his sister, who was fighting the case, also was killed on the way when she was coming from the High Court. And they say it was an accident, but she was killed intentionally. So I can give you cases.
Multiple instances, isn't it? So it must be all the more difficult for one to deal with, to work around this when your own people who you're working with are under threat. In addition to, everybody else, because like you said, the numbers matter, and we are a very small number in Gujarat.
And the point is, when organizations like Navsarjan are there, we get support from the community because we work for them, and we work with good intentions, with passion, commitment, and there's something which has made us what we are. And we are never proud, we are proud of the work we do, but we don't have that kind of arrogance in our work. But the point is, how do we are seen by the state? We are seen as anti.
Can you also tell us how is Navsarjan politically positioned or ideologically positioned?
I think Ambedkar, Ambedkar is what we his ideology is something which Navsarjan follows. And we will, until this organization is there and the movement is there, I think we will never step away from the Ambedkar ideology. That is what is the passion which we have all have generated, is the life of through the life and the inspiration of Ambedkar's life. But apart from Ambedkar's life, I think what we have been taught is to understand the life of other social reformers like Jyotiba Phule, Savitribai Phule. We have also been taught about the life of Martin Luther King and also of Nelson Mandela. I think these all leaders have inspired most of us of what we have been able to do. And I think because politically, if you see, there's so much of division and fraction within the entire Dalit understanding of the Dalit ideology and the Dalit movement. But I would say Dalit movement is Ambedkar movement for me. I believe that if there was no Ambedkar, there would not have been Dalit movement. Let me tell you very, very frankly. But the point is well, everybody, do they accept Ambedkar ideology? I think that's also is a question in the current context. How do you see the entire issue of caste? Which lens are you looking at the caste? And I think what I was touched by Ambedkar's life was how he built up himself as a leader, and how, despite all odds and so much untouchability he faced as a Dalit, and coming from a very poor community. And I think majority of the people with whom we work amongst the Dalits are poor. Even my colleagues who have joined Navsarjan, majority of them come from very poor families. Some of them were also cleaning streets, some of them were doing good polish, working the brick lanes, working as migrant laborers, doing farm work, and living in absolute poverty. So we understand what it means to be a Dalit and what it means to be a poor Dalit. But when the poverty and your caste comes together, it makes you more vulnerable and makes you more, makes your struggle more difficult. And I think that's what we realized in Gujarat was that how Ambedkar is being sidelined just because there was a father of nation is born in Gujarat. And I think because what I have come to know from the wisdom and from the learnings from the Dalit leaders in Gujarat is when Ambedkar came first time in Gujarat, he was shown black flags. He was not welcomed. So this is Gujarat. By the Dalits. And Gujarat was one state with Maharashtra until 1960, and it became a separate state in 1960. So Ambedkar must have come before that. So, and that was part of Maharashtra. So how could you discriminate? Like this man who was the law minister, the first law minister of independent India, who drafted and who wrote the Indian Constitution. How instead of accepting, but that's what is the dynamics in Gujarat. That Ambedkar also talked about non-violence. He's the first person in India who talked about human rights, right? But then how do you see non-violence with the framework of human rights in a state like Gujarat, where Gandhi ideology or Gandhian approach dominates even in the civil society? And I think we would be one of the very prominent organization in Gujarat who also propagated Ambedkar ideology, and because there have books written on Ambedkar's life, about his ideology, books for children, books for common masses, and that's very important because what we are today as Dalits is because of the sacrifice of so many people, but mainly it's Ambedkar. So we cannot forget Ambedkar. And I get pain when Ambedkar is seen as more as a god, or his idol or statue is worshipped and garlanded, but then his thoughts are not followed, his preachings, his ideology is not being practiced. So I think
he himself spoke about doing away with idols, isn't it?
But now how you see that is, what is it? Ambedkar should be in our heart, in our soul. I think if you keep Dr. Ambedkar in your heart, mind, soul, then the courage you get now, like that's what I feel about myself, that the courage I get is because for me Jai Bhim, and like it is something which I can't see anything beyond that. For me, I get so much of strength when I say Jai Bhim, when I speak about Ambedkar's life, because it gives me like a kind of a power, in the sense to speak out, to fight against oppression or caste discrimination, even the issue of gender violence in Gujarat or in other part of the country.
Correct. We were told, and I've also seen in the rally, that Gujarat is one of the, I mean, we spoke about this, being the state where the father of the nation was born. But we were also told that the Dalit movement here has, over a period of time, formed alliances with the Gandhians here, which we don't see in a lot of other states. How should Dalits outside Gujarat see it, or how should even others outside Gujarat see it? And did this alliance in fact happen? Maybe, I don't know whether it's evident that it's not the case with Navsarjan Trust, but what about other Dalit organizations? And if such an alliance happened, why did it happen? Was it a successful alliance? If you can tell us
To tell
more
you,
about
I very frankly, whatever my experience of 24 years in this field is, there have not been very strong alliance between Gandhians and Ambedkar rights, because ultimately, and I don't, for me, I don't want to say that, I don't want to do that kind of thing, that who is higher than whom. So when you have this equation between Gandhi versus Ambedkar, and if you are a Gandhian, you will say Gandhi is bigger than Ambedkar, and if I am an Ambedkar, I will say Ambedkar is bigger than Gandhi. But if we put them into same footing, if you put them on the same pedestal, then those issues will not come up. So the point is, we don't have that kind of debate happening in Gujarat, where when we say that, okay, there hasn't been a contribution of Gandhi in the issue of untouchability against Dalit. Okay, we accept that part. But then, see, the problem comes up is that is whether Gandhians are ready to accept Ambedkar as equal to Gandhi. I think there's a bigger challenge, and so that has created a lot of anger, and I would say against Gandhi amongst the Dalit activists, and there have been situations where if you even talk about Gandhi, then there's a kind of rejection by the Dalit activist. And I would say that, why do you reject somebody, right? You cannot throw the baby with the water. You just have to accept certain parts of Gandhi's philosophy. Yeah, he's the man who wrote about experiments with truth, right? He wrote so many things about himself, his personal life, and that's something like somebody who has the courage will do that. So I respect Gandhi.
Right.
But I think why Gandhi is been not accepted or given so much respect by Dalits in Gujarat or other parts of the country is because of the Pune Pact. And I think from there the entire debate has started. Like, why? And somewhere people think that even Gandhi didn't respected Ambedkar. And I think I would agree also. Because if he would have respected Ambedkar, then he wouldn't have taken such a stand where he had gone on satyagraha, on the fast unto death and all that. Where he also got afraid about Ambedkar's standpoint of view on separate electorates. And I think that one has to understand that part. And I was just say whether Gandhi was totally honest to the Dalits, that I am questioning that.
And if he was, and if the work of Gandhians were in fact towards, or on a similar path as you, then I don't think people would reject Gandhians or Gandhi, don't you think so? I mean, a lot of times work of a certain group of people speaks for itself, and if people are rejecting this and the work of Gandhi, then I mean, it's not like it comes from nowhere. And I mean, there is a lot of writing right now and narratives right now around how Gandhi himself was, casteist, which is all questionable, because I mean, which is all like something which we can only talk about because they are no longer with us. But anyway, this is this. But like you were saying, we wanted to bring this question up because we were told that there were alliances, maybe other organizations. But in your case, you clearly are still questioning, whether he was in fact honest with his.
No, the point in Gujarat was he set up Harijan Sevak Sangh. Harijan, the word he coined the word Harijan for Dalits, untouchables, or forever untouchables. So, and in Harijan Sevak Sangh, I do know that there are a lot of Dalits who were taken into those positions to lead that organization. But the point is, now Harijan word itself is banned.
derogatory.
Derogatory. And but the point for us is, even the Gandhians still call Dalits as Harijans, and we always tell them now also, even on into 2016, we have to tell them, please don't call us as Harijans, say Dalits, and they will keep saying no, because Gandhi was calling Dalit, former untouchables as Harijans. We'll keep saying them Harijans. So even, like, I don't want to say, one of the eminent person from the Gandhian movement, he was a vice chancellor, and even on the dais he was saying in his university Harijan word. And some of the Dalit activists asked me to give a note to him to not to speak this word again. And he said, I am speaking this, saying this, addressing Dalits as Harijan in the context of Gandhi, when Gandhi was there. But things have changed, you have to move on. You have
And
to
even,
move on.
Even back then, I think there was, the word itself was, by many Dalits back then also, they did not accept the word immediately, isn't it? I mean,
Yeah.
correct me if I'm wrong. But even Babasaheb mentioned back then itself that we are not okay with this word. And still they were, which means, like you said, they are not respecting Babasaheb for what he is and for what he has said.
But if you are call us as Harijan, means children of God, means
We have-
like we are, aren't we human beings? Like we are talking about how do you identify yourself as a Dalit? So I want to say I'm proud of being a Dalit. I don't have any issues with whatever people tell me. I want to give my identity a name which I am proud of. I don't want to be called as Harijan, because
Which you prefer.
and if somebody calls me Harijan, I feel it's a bad word, and for me I feel that I am humiliated. So that is what I will.
Why do Dalits have to be children of God? Dalits have their own families,
Yeah.
isn't it?
We are born from the wombs of our mothers and fathers. Yeah. We are not like, it's not God who has given us birth.
Right, and especially when Babasaheb has himself said that we need to break down the Hindu dharma for us to be able to move. I mean, break caste. Then going back to that children of God business becomes all the more problematic, isn't it?
But maybe that time Gandhi must have thought about, because maybe the situation, or I don't know how he decided, but
No, but also that whole thing that where he decides he has the agency to decide a name for this entire community without, I mean, it wasn't like Babasaheb was around. Why wasn't this conversation or whatever happened in the presence of Babasaheb?
my point is, can Gandhians take take that Ambedkar's understanding on the issue of caste and integrate into their own work and to their understanding?
Which hasn't happened.
This
till
has
now.
not happened. No,
course.
not at all.
Right. So coming back to caste in Gujarat, which we discussed already with the various incidents which are happening, one after the other. Navsarjan Trust had also released a report, not the 96 one, the most recent one, which said that there are untouchability is the percentage of untouchability is almost 98% in Gujarat. Can you go a little more into this report?
This is the report which we.
Okay.
Now, this report was released in year 2000, and it covers 1,589 villages
Wow.
and 98 forms of untouchability practices, which were identified through meetings with the people, through our work. And I think what was interesting for us was that it was not that we were not knowing the forms of untouchability, but we wanted to just understand the prevalence. So certain forms of untouchability are more prevalent than the others. So we had categorized into eight order in the same categories. So one is water for drinking. There was one category on food and beverage, one on religion, one on caste-based occupation, touch, access to public facilities and institutions, prohibitions and social sanctions, and private sector discrimination. And this study was done through the support of an Afro-American professor. He was a political scientist, Professor Christian Davenport from the United States, and some of the other experts from Oxford University. And we used a very scientific methodology called Mokan scaling method and random sampling, because when these findings were brought out, the first reaction of the state government was that we don't accept the findings. Now if you see the findings, which I think the government of Gujarat would be a bit disturbed, was when we saying that still people when the dominant caste enter their home, they sprinkle water to purify themselves. So which came up in 51% of the villages, 51.4. So I think that was something. Then there was something like if people get angry if they get accidentally touched by a Dalit, it's still going on. 38.4% of the villages. Dalits sidestepping when they are walking on the public road and they have to just, when a dominant caste person is coming, in 24% villages, they just moved on one side to give them whatever respect. And yeah, even in the schools, in 42% school we found that there is separate water pot kept for the Dalit children. Then in 44% of the villages, the Dalits don't participate in the Gram Sabha, or there is a discrimination against them if they participate. Then midday meal in 53% villages in the schools, the Dalit children are seated separately in midday meals. 54% villages, Dalit cannot sit on the village square. They are not allowed. I can go on and on. In 66% village wells, Dalits are discriminated. They cannot fetch water by themselves. There is somebody who will, from the dominant caste, will pour water from top. Yes, I have personally seen last year only. I saw it. Yeah. Then in 64.7% of the villages, you still have to address a Rajput person as Bapu. And just to tell you, just recently, last week only, I was with few of the ministers of Gujarat state government, and there was one minister who is from the Rajput caste, and a Dalit minister was addressing him as Bapu, and right in our presence, just recently. Can you believe? My goodness. Then in 95.6% of the villages, there is separate burial ground for Dalits. So in Gujarat, there also was something. These people were telling us that Dalits can't cremate their body, or they can't burn, because people say that dominant caste, that if you burn the body, it will the air will be impurified. Yeah, the pure air will become impure if a Dalit is burnt. 96.9% of the villages, the Dalits cannot enter a dominant caste house. They have to stand outside if they have some work. It's mind-boggling. It's like.
And once the report was released,
Yeah.
in 2000, I'm sure it would have, it probably shook up everybody. And I'm sure the government was pretty shaken up too. Have they done anything constructive to?
They have done destructive things. That time the current Prime Minister was the Chief Minister of Gujarat. What he did was he got so many copies of this report. And we have done a translated version, which is a different version than this, which is called Abhar Cheti Nibhad. The same one, but so what we have put is, we have put the names of the villages where we have found this kind of practices. So what the government did was, they sent a team from the Social Justice and Empowerment Department to monitor, and thus to identify and to just take affidavits from the Dalits to say that we have been forced by Navsarjan to say that I said this kind of practice is not happening in our village. Can you believe that? That happened. And the government, they just passed a resolution saying we condemn the report of Navsarjan, and we asked another university called CEPT to undertake a similar study like Navsarjan and to condemn the findings of Navsarjan. That was the objective, one of the core objective of that study.
Which came out saying there is not.
Yeah, that was released in 2013, and we didn't get the report from the government. And then we have to file an application, the Right to Information Act. Still we were not given. Then there was a hearing, and then we were given a hard copy of that report.
Which said what?
Which condemned our report.
Condemned your report. So
Yes.
for 13 years, all they did is this. Wow.
And you know how many villages they covered? 5 villages. And only one village was where the study of Navsarjan was done. The rest of the 4 villages was where we have not done the study. So this is
So the point of this report was, in fact, to show to the people, to show to the state, to show to everybody involved that these practices happen, and at some level to combat the discrimination happening. When the government goes in the opposite direction, instead of going along with you, or seeing that it is their responsibility that this is happening, doesn't it bog you down? Doesn't it disillusion?
Not at all.
Doesn't it?
We know that the fight for justice or the fight the Dalit liberation will be taking much more time than what, because see, the mindset has not changed. Who is the government? They are also from the community dominant caste, and whoever Dalits are in the government, they don't show that kind of because they feel they are in minority. So those issues are there, those dynamics are there. But ultimately, we believe that if we are true to our cause, if we are committed to what we have taken up, nobody can shook us down. That's what I believe in. So we face a lot of hurdles in our work. We face extreme forms of rejection, even from the civil society. We face those kind of situation. When we took up the issue of manual scavenging in Gujarat, and we said that manual scavenging is practiced in Gandhi's Gujarat, and oh, how could you say that? So we got that kind of response.
Right. Also, one thing which probably this is straying away from the report, but within let's say Tamil Nadu, where I've seen this myself, there's a lot of even in the face of the kind of discrimination one faces, there is a lot of inter-subcaste sort of discrimination going on, which somehow it might not break down the movement completely, but at least the momentum of the movement, where instead of, it's difficult, it's not like because within subcastes of, let's say, the Kshatriyas or the Shudras or whatever, Savarna groups too, there is infighting, it's not like it's only here. But have you tried working towards, sort of easing down these inter-subcaste fights within the Dalits and trying to get them together?
I think you're very right, because when Navsarjan began, and that time I think it was led by only one subcaste of Dalits, who are in the top layer of the Dalit communities, the weaver caste. But slowly, as we were building the organization, I am not a weaver. I don't come from that caste. So, but I never propagated my caste, my caste identity, the subcaste, what you were saying, because there is so much of subcaste politics. And then I'm also a woman. But the point is, as Navsarjan was growing, we also realized that if we want to address the issue of caste-based discrimination, we also have to look within the community, within the Dalits. And that's why there is a need to build up leadership of Dalits amongst the Dalit subcaste. So we are very conscious, and I think that consciousness made us realize. And so in Navsarjan we have my colleagues are from different subcastes and even from different religion. Like we have Christian Dalits as well as I don't want to call Hindu Dalits, but we do have that religious
from different across religion.
I am a Buddhist. So the point is how do you look into the entire question of subcaste division across the country, and in Gujarat we are just 7% and we are 32 subcastes. So I think in this study of understanding untouchability, we also focus on the subcaste discrimination amongst Dalits, and we identified 99 forms of subcaste discrimination amongst Dalits, which is not so prominent like the dominant caste versus Dalits, but which just gives a kind of a glimpse into that what kind of discrimination is happening amongst one Dalit subcaste than the other Dalit subcaste. And then when you're talking about untouchability practiced by dominant caste against Dalits, we also were knowing that which is the particular subcaste who faces maximum untouchability in comparison to other Dalit subcastes. And it comes out that the Senma community or the Nadia community, the Valmiki community amongst the Dalits, they face the maximum brunt of caste-based untouchability. So I think this is what we are. We are honest about the subcaste divisions amongst Dalits, and we have tried to generate unity amongst them. So we did a yatra which was called as Ram Patra Chodo Bhim Patra Apnao. It was led by Martin. Ram Patra Chodo means throw away the vessel which is called as Ram Patra, which is kept separate, which is a separate vessel for you to drink water or tea in the dominant caste houses, and drink in Bhim Patra. Bhim Patra is the Patra of equality. So it was a ceremony which was organized where everybody sat around and drink in the same saucer, the tea. It was wonderful. and everybody taking a pledge that we will not practice subcaste discrimination, and that was wonderful. You know how many days it went for? It went for more than 3 months, and we covered 463 villages. So what you see
Wow.
now in Una is a lot of hard work which is being done at the grassroots, and that was the most powerful program in the Dalit movement in Gujarat. There have been several programs we have done, we have done. In 2013 we did it's called Shobha Yatra, March for Equality, and we had 40,000 Dalits came on the streets of Ahmedabad city, on 13th April. The first biggest rally which was taken in Gujarat was in 1997, where we were working in 1500 villages, and more than 20,000 Dalits came on in Ramlila ground, and that was the most powerful rally. So you see, there's a history.
History of rallies.
This is not for us. We are like, for us 10,000, 20,000. We said now the time has come to come in millions. Now is the time when Patidar movement can bring out so many million people. Why can't Dalit? And that was what I had thought about. Let me tell you very frankly. Before this Una Yatra and before this program which happened on 31st July, we already were planning to hold the biggest Sabha of Dalits in Gujarat, and that also in the same GMDC ground where the Patels had gathered on 25th August last year, and they paid just 1 rupee for that ground. And we were saying that we will also force the government to, and we will say we will also pay 1 rupee and we will hold the biggest this rally Sabha of Dalits. And but you know what happened. But I think there is still time for Dalits to come together as a larger force, because as you said, we do have a lot of challenges within Dalit rights movement in Gujarat and in other parts of the country, where we are divided based on subcaste, by the ideology, we are divided by within the political parties. But for me, I believe that if you are a Dalit, then you have to come together and forget all your other identities. Just say, if I have faced discrimination based on my caste identity, I have to come together and forget my differences, forget my personal goal. I think the personal versus the community goal, which is more important for you. So if you ask me as a person, I would say the cause of the community is more important for me than my leadership being shown in the movement. Yeah.
So before we move on to what has happened in Una, one last question about Navsarjan and its method of operation is how, and because I've met 3 fiery women leaders of Navsarjan yesterday, how has Navsarjan focused on building women leadership within the Dalit movement? Because that is also, I think, equally important.
It is so much important, I think, because when I joined this organization, I was the first woman, and I feel that many times when I meet in Dalit meetings, issues of Dalit community, and I feel as a leader, I feel very few women are there. But I think Navsarjan took that challenge, and we built up the leadership of Dalit women. At one time we had only men in Navsarjan. So in 95 we had a batch of women, but then we had more men than women. But when I was the program director on gender equity in Navsarjan, I proposed that idea to Martin, that why don't we just ensure that we have adequate representation of Dalit women, we will only take Dalit women in a leadership program. And in 2000 we had the first batch of Dalit women, of 40 Dalit women, and I think that was very important. And I think strategically, if you see, if the Dalit movement also thinks about that on the same lines, that if you really want to build up Dalit movement, then you also have to ensure that there is adequate representation of Dalits, not based on subcaste but also on gender. And I think Navsarjan has created that model where we have built up the leadership of women from the grassroots. And these women, I think they are leading all the protests. They don't want to say that because we are a woman and a Dalit woman, we will only talk about Dalit women, or we are talking about issues of women. We can address and lead the entire issues of Dalit rights. And I think that has been done. And I think, but still a lot of work has to be done. Since 2010, I also hold conferences across country and in 8 states, and I identified 25 Dalit women leaders, and I trained them for 1 year. And they are like different states: Rajasthan, Maharashtra, Chhattisgarh, Orissa, Haryana, Bihar, UP.
All over.
Yes, and I feel very Madhya Pradesh. And I do understand that they face a lot of struggle in their own organizations, because I think Dalit organizations and Dalit movement still have to accept not only participation but leadership of Dalit women. They still have to overcome the stereotypes and the patriarchal values which they have also inculcated. Because even when we were working in like when we were not leading the organization or the movement, there have been situations where people think, what will this woman do? They can't do anything. Like, oh, women, because there's a quote now where saying औरतों की क्या दिमाग पैरों के तलवों में, means yeah, that our brains are not in the place where the brain is located but in our toes, which everybody knows it's practically, scientifically, biologically. But I feel very like if I am like where I have reached to this position of leading not only the organization but being part of the Dalit movement is I have to pay a lot of sacrifice, personal life, not being accepted by my own family of the work which I do. Like not the family but my father, I think, who was afraid, who was a government officer. And then even the kind of tension I went through in my organization when I became the head of the organization. I was elected as the director of this organization, and there were 4 of my male colleagues who were, and I was the only woman who was contesting on this position, and I got the majority of the votes. But the point is, I don't want the organizations of movement to be divided just because of the power struggle. I think that is what our struggle for power is, the power equation which is being created, where the division, where the dominant caste have more economic, social and political power and we don't have. So our power equation should not be within our communities or within our organizations or movement. It should be fighting against the bigger, larger power in the society.
Right. Makes a lot of sense. But anyway, since we're running out of time, our last segment will be about what happened on the 11th of July and the incidents which followed it, which is at least the timeline that I see is the incident of our 4 Dalit men being beaten up in Una and being dragged from from a village close to Una, being tied up there, brutalized, humiliated, and then within a couple of days we see another movement picking up where carcasses of dead animals and mainly dead cows being strewn around in corporation offices by a Dalit organization, and a strong form of resistance coming out, and within a few days the Dalit Mahasammelan happening, and then the Dalit Asmita Yatra happening. Well, though we are not entirely sure about which of the organizations which went behind this, we were of the opinion that it was a collective effort of all the organizations in Gujarat. But if you can go through the incidents with us once more so that we also have some clarity as to what happened post July 11th.
I think post July 11, when the incident happened, I was not in India, and but I received on the Facebook the video and everything. So I immediately contacted my colleagues Kantilal and Kirit and told them I need the copy of the complaint. And then I said, why don't you go for a fact finding? And then a fact finding team was formed, and where 2 of them were there, and there were some men who were part of the Una Yatra who were involved, Subodh and Kaushik. And then this fact-finding team went on 15, 16, 17, 18 and they did intensive investigation into the entire incident. I think during that time also on 18th of July, one of my colleagues, Natu, he's been there with us for last 18 years. He comes from the same community. And I think he has already represented this issue of cow dying because of plastic. And he has submitted a memorandum in 2013 to the district collector of Surendranagar, and who had not taken any action, because when the cows died, the Dalits have to lift them up, and then he showed him pictures of so much of plastic coming out from the bellies of the cows. Now, when this thing happened, and I think we all were angered with the way the boys were beaten up, and we couldn't accept that how could somebody could be humiliated or be punished just because that person is forced to do this caste-based labor or practice. And Natu, along with some of the men of this community, he decided, and that was very voluntarily, and he said that now this is time to show to the administration and to the state government that if you do this to us, then we will reject this work. So he took 25 dead cows. He got it from several villages across around Surendranagar headquarters. And he took those dead cows right in front of the collector's office and threw them there and said that now the cows are are the mothers of yours, the state government and the administration. You take the responsibility. And I think that was so crucial, because what triggered from there was what you saw after 11th July, the movement which started, like, because this news,
It
I
shook
think
up the country.
It shook up the country, and then it went from several places across the state, and then many more Dalits, they said that we will stop. They said we reject this caste based forced labor, and we will not do it. And you saw what happened in Gujarat, and they were protest and protest and protest across the state, and I think it was
The
so
people
powerful.
just mobilized by
Yes.
themselves.
And my colleagues were all on the ground, and they were saying, now this is the right time. The hard work which we have done for last 20-25 years, let us mobilize the community. So they started organizing protests, rallies across the state, and I think that was so powerful, and that built up the momentum to what happened on 31st July. And I think media played a very important role. Local media, which remained silent for such a long time on the caste issue, they became so vibrant, and they wanted to cover everything. They invited us on debate. They wanted to take up this report. They wanted us to talk about this issue. So much came up, and international media, national media, print media, electronic media, everywhere caste was being, and
Social
I think
media too, for that
social
matter.
I think this was so powerful, and it was needed also, because it showed the frustration of Dalit youth in Gujarat, that they want to just speak out against caste based oppression, violence being meted on them just because of being a Dalit person. And I think that was wonderful. And then the 31st July program happened. Okay, there are certain dynamics, I think that happens, but I think what could have happened was, it could have been a more unified approach. And because if it was done with a unified approach and with inviting several organizations, so we were there with them to support them. But I think in the entire process of how to organize this yatra, what kind of messages we have to give to the community, how do we build like, there was a solidarity between Dalits and Muslims, but even like, because this was the first time when the Dalit forget the subcaste and came together. We were talking about the issue of manual scavenging, apart from the issue of leather tanning or removal of carcasses. But I think we have to be very clear about our strategy. And I think there were certain issues about who is dominating the entire, like, whether it is caste versus the class. I think that was a major issue which...
What do you make of this presence of ML groups? Because Gujarat is not a state which has had any other party, even political party other than Congress and BJP. ML doesn't have a presence here, is what I've understood after my conversation with different people. They've not done any ground-based work, is what I understand too. They've never done anything here. So now them coming into the scene in Gujarat, what do you make of this?
I think it won't be easy for them, because I think if you see the Saurashtra region, I think BSP has a stronghold amongst Dalits. So, and this incident happened in Saurashtra region, and I think that could be one of the reason what happened, because on 13th August, I'm confused. 13th August, there was a bike rally which was taken in Una town, and I think that was indirectly it was supported by BSP, right? So I think now you understand that if it was a non-political yatra, then ML is a political party, yeah. So and there were people.
More specifically, CPI and liberation in this.
Yes. And for me, being an Ambedkar, right? For me, I'm a non-political person, but I follow Buddhist philosophy, and okay. The point is, in a rightist state, in a state which is for past 20 years been ruled by one political party who is a right-wing party, and where you want to bring a new political party which has a Marxist approach or a leftist approach, nothing wrong in that sense. But I'm just thinking that, was it the right time? And because as you said, that the ground level work which was done by Navsarjan, and I think wherever this yatra went, Navsarjan had played a very important role by providing the support to the marchers and ensuring that the sabha is organized properly, ensuring that there is no tension amongst the community, because there were certain villages where the community was not prepared. So my colleagues were there to just tell them that and a lot of people who came to Unaware also came with that hope that Navsarjan was very much part of this entire yatra. But I was very much shocked and I was in pain, because the way our founder Martin Macwan, who told us that okay, it's not us who are being like the in the leadership position in this yatra, but we have to forget that and we have to support them. But when wherever he was there in the yatra, he was there in certain places. Okay, one thing was okay, because we don't want to take that the position of the person who has been, or the people who are leading the march, but at least you have to respect that person, no? Who has worked for more than 30 years in this state, who had fought against untouchability. And then what the most painful part was, how he was rejected on this day, on the day on this Mahasabha happened on 15th August, and that was very painful for all of us. Like many of the community people were asking us, and if he was being given the opportunity, na, what happened in Unya Mahasabha, it wouldn't have happened, because we know his understanding, his reach out to the community. He knows that he can control the situation. He has that ability. He has that wisdom. He is respected so much by the Dalits in Gujarat. And if he's disrespected, means the Dalits are also disrespected. That's what. And even being head of this organization, I would say that we have been trained by him. So we have very much pain with that reality. That how could you just forget a man who is very much apart from the other leaders. Now you are just saying that this thing happened in last 15 days, or it's not possible. It's not possible. If there is not a hard groundwork, you cannot take out a yatra. And if you would have taken it, it would have been a very political yatra. But you have to be very clear what kind of slogans you are saying, what kind of speeches do you give. You cannot say derogatory words against a dominant caste just because they have said. So where is Ambedkar ideology there? Ambedkar never told us to humiliate other person. He never told us to say that if somebody beat us up, we'll also beat that person. Okay, we talked about self-defense. He said protection of your rights. But why we have to become like oppressors? What's the difference between us and the dominant caste? Can we build a new kind of society where there is no violence? We don't want anybody to be killed and what happened after post UNA's program, where so many people were attacked. 20 of them are in the civil hospital Ahmedabad. Immediately after this program, people started contacting me on the phone. Help us, we need protection, police protection. Since from 15th August, we are on our heels and helping them out, reaching them out. It's very painful. We didn't wanted that the outcome of this entire hard work done. I do appreciate a lot of hard work. And the intention was very good, and I think it created so much of what you say, a kind of a spark in the Dalit movement across the country. International community was supporting us, and it's still. I think that it's not that 100% failure. We say that we still can learn lessons from this, and then now how do we move on? And this is the right time that we come together and say that now let us unite and say let us move forward.
I don't think anything has shaken up our beloved Prime Minister as much as what is happening
Absolutely.
in Gujarat has. So that is what we hope for. And is there anything else that you would like to tell Dalit Camera? Anything that you would like to tell us?
As a person, because I follow Buddhist philosophy, I do Vipassana. I would say that many times a lot of our energy goes in showing our anger in a very
violent
way. And I think this is a time when we also have an inner peace, because if you don't have inner peace in our heart, in our soul, we won't be able to think strategically and positively. And I think now our energy should be used very effectively, without doubting anybody or negating the space of that person. And it could be a collaborative leadership.
Yeah, definitely. But also considering that even India has had movements like the Dalit Panthers movement in connection with the Black Panthers movement, where armed rebellion was seen as something which is relevant for the Dalits now in the face of the kind of discrimination they are facing. Do you think that is a method which doesn't lead anywhere, and we should we should in fact follow Babasaheb's method, which was largely non-violent and peaceful?
It's also the 125th birth anniversary of Dr. Ambedkar, and I think this is the right time for us to learn lessons from the past, and then yes, we have to follow his ideology, his path, and the volume written by him on annihilation of caste. I think this is the right time to debate, have a larger debate on his book written, on the volume written on annihilation of caste. Let us debate on it, and what strategies we can take from it, and what, looking at the current scenario, what new things we need. And I also want to say the last thing is, it cannot be only the fight of Dalits against the other communities. We do have, from the dominant caste, we do have people who don't believe and practice inequality. We have to take them together. We don't have to say it's only unity between Dalits and Muslims. We have to build the horizon, and we have to reach out. We have to break down out the boundaries and the barriers, and say that whoever believes and practices equality and fight against inequality is a Dalit for us.
Great. Thank you. Thanks a lot, Manjula, for talking to us. It was